Hello guys and welcome to a guide for Restoration Druid PvE wise for 7.0.3. Now this is Legion related, right? And it is the pre-patch and I do understand that, so some things might change for Legion when it actually is released. But a lot of these things are still going to be relevant because it's a pre-patch for a reason, right? It's pretty much what Legion is going to be like. So let's start off with your talent choices. Now for the first here we have Prosperity, Scenario Ward or Abundance. Now Abundance is irrelevant, you don't ever really want to use this. You do want to use both Prosperity and Scenario Ward though, and that is kind of dependent on what talent you choose for your 75 tier, aka Soul of the Forest or Incarnation Tree of Life. If you use Tree of Life, I'm going to get into this in just a bit. If you do use Tree of Life, you want to use Scenario Ward, and if you use Soul of the Forest, you want to use Prosperity. For the tier 30 talent tree, you want to use either Renewal or Displacer Beast. Wild Charge is not an option. Now, why you want to use between these two and which one you should use in different occasions is Renewal if you don't really ever have to move, because that's a huge heal for yourself, but it has a rather long cooldown of, I do believe, 2 minutes. So that is very usable if you don't ever have to move really, but if you do have to move a lot during different fights or you need to get from one point to another one really quick, then Displacer Beast is the option for this talent tree. For the tier 45 talent tree, it doesn't really matter what you pick, it's 100% up to preference. Now, all of these three do different things and you don't ever really want to activate these abilities or take use of them. The only thing you want to do with them is actually just grant the passive effect of each one of these, and they have different ones. So, the Balance Affinity one is increases your range of all your abilities by 5 yards. That's the passive for that one, so if you want to pick that, then you can do that. The Feral Affinity one increases your movement speed passively by 15%, so if there's a fight where you want to move a lot, then obviously use that. And for the Guardian Affinity one, you get 10% pure damage reduction, and that's the one I think you should pick most of the time because damage reduction in raids is just good. Now it's pretty much the same for the tier 60 talents. It's a stun, it's a mass root, or it's a typhoon which pushes enemies back. Now the thing is, I do prefer typhoon because if you have a lot of mobs on you, for example in a dungeon or in a raid or something like that, you can push them away and you can start kiting as a Resto druid. Now I guess you can do the same thing with mass entanglement, but maybe some creatures are immune to roots, and the mighty bash is only for one target. So personally I think typhoon is the best one here, but it really doesn't make a difference. Now in the tier 75 talent tree is where things get really interesting. So you have Soul of the Forest and Incarnation Tree of Life. Cultivation is not really an option because the other two are so strong compared to it. Now Soul of the Forest is only picked if you have Prosperity in your 15 talent tree, and Incarnation Tree of Life is only picked if you have Scenario Ward, and I'm going to explain why. So Soul of the Forest enhances your Swift Mend by shit tons pretty much. It makes your next regrowth or rejuvenation 200% stronger after you use Swift Mend, and it makes your Wild Growth 75% stronger after you use Swift Mend. Now, Prosperity reduces the cooldown of your Swift Mend by 5 seconds, and it also makes it have 2 charges, so you can use it a lot more frequently than if you wouldn't have had it. But Soul of the Forest isn't really that useful if you do not have that many Swift Mends, and that is why you always pick Prosperity along with Soul of the Forest, and you don't really pick Prosperity and Tree of Life because then they just cancel out each other. It doesn't really make sense. Now for Scenario Ward, which is in itself a really strong single target heal, it fits really well with Incarnation because Incarnation is just overall a huge heal which you can use every, I think it's 3 minutes. Yeah, every 3 minutes you can use Incarnation Tree of Life. It increases your healing by 15% overall, and you get 120% more armor, and it enhances your rejuvenation, wild growth, regrowth, and tiny roots, I guess, if you want to use that. It makes it instacast, regrowth is instacast, and I think wild growth you can put it on more targets, and rejuvenation is stronger overall because obviously you get more healing. Now, this is very good paired up with Scenario Ward because if you put Scenario Ward on your tank, for example, because it's going to take a lot of damage, then you can use Incarnation Tree of Life when there's a lot of overall raid damage because you get 15% more healing, and you can just Wild Growth shit tons of people, spam Rejuvenation for even more healing, and you just overall get so much more healing but as I said, it's a 3-minute cooldown, so it's more of like burst healing than Soul of the Forest and Prosperity, which is more of like overall healing during the fight. So for the tier 90 talent tree, we have Spring Blossoms and Inner Peace. Germination is not really an option. So Spring Blossom, what it does is that when you do put your efflorescences on the ground, which is just an overall AoE heal on the ground, that when people stand in it, it's a green circle. When people stand in that, they get healed for a decent amount. It's not that much, but it's up to 3 people and they get a hot on them, you could say, when they stand in it. So what this talent does, Spring Blossoms, is that each target healed by your efflorescence is healed for an additional 60% of your spell power over 6 seconds. So overall it just makes your efflorescence stronger, which is good, obviously. And then we have Inner Peace, which reduces the cooldown of your Tranquility by 60 seconds. Now that means that your Tranquility goes from 3 minutes to 2-minute cooldown. Why is this 2 different options and when should you use them, right? Because Spring Blossoms is just overall more healing, right? You get more healing out of it. Now Inner Peace is very good when there's, for example, a boss that every 2 minutes or every 1 minute or something like that has a huge AoE ability that you need cooldowns for your raid. For example, let's say everyone loses 60% of their health every 1 minute. Then you can do Tranquility for one of them, and the next time someone else can use their ability, and then on the third one you can use your Tranquility again. Now you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have Inner Peace. Then you would have to wait for another one and then you can use yours. So it's pretty much what up to your raid team's cooldown rotation, and this just makes it so that you can take that spot more times. So for the 100 talent tree, I was actually looking into this from all different kinds of websites, and it seems that pretty much all the websites says that Flourish is the best one by far, and it says that it extends your duration of all your heal over time effects on friendly targets within 60 yards by 6 seconds, and it has a 1-minute cooldown. So what this does is not that, you know, you activate it and it's up for 10 seconds or anything like that, and then every single cast you do after that is extended by 6 seconds. No, that is not what it does. What it does is that when you have hots on targets, you activate this spell, and then from on that point, for example, let's say your Rejuvenation has 1 second left on a target, when you activate this, it's going to go up to 7 seconds, and this is, you know, affected on all your raid members. So I feel like this is a really good talent, and why everyone says it's good is when, for example, you're in a raid team, right, and you use this ability when you have Rejuvenation or Wild Growth on tons of people. It's just going to make it so that for 6 more seconds you don't need to apply hots to them and waste mana. Now the thing is, I think that Stonebark personally is really good as well, but I would say that this is best in dungeons. Now, why I think that's the case is because Flourish is to all party members within 60 yards, so that's obviously very good for a raid team, and it's going to be overall just tons of healing. But when there's only 5 people, and Stonebark, what it does is that it reduces your cooldown by, on Ironbark by 30 seconds, aka half its time, and then it also increases your healing over time effect by 20%. Now if you're in a party group and there's only 5 people, then I think that having Ironbark on a 1-minute cooldown to put on your tank instead of 1.5 minutes, that's going to be really strong. And I can't say for sure that this is going to be the best talent for dungeons, but I think that might be the case, even though a lot of people say that Flourish is the best. I think Stonebark is something to take in consideration still, and you should try it out and see if you like it or not. So your stat priorities are Intellect, Haste, Crit, Mastery, and then at last Versatility. Why Haste is the best after Intellect is because it reduces your global cooldown, and it also increases the tick rate of all your hots, which obviously is a grand part of your healing. Now that we have the talent choices and all the stat priorities out of our way, we can do some basics on Resto Druid healing. Now the first thing I want to talk about is efflorescences. This is something that you put on the ground and it's going to be there for 30 seconds. It's fairly big of a circle, it's a green one, and then it's going to heal maximum up to 3 targets, and that's optimally what you want to have it heal. If 3 people, then you can just put it in the middle of the group and it's going to heal the targets which is the most injured one, so it's always going to prioritize the people that have the lowest HP, which is good. But if you can't really do that, which, for example, if you're in a dungeon, you're doing a 3-man thing or anything like that, then you can put it on 2 people and it's still going to work fine. Now for all your hots, you want to keep them up as many as you possibly can on each target, because obviously they do healing, but they also work well with your mastery, because what your mastery does is that it increases your direct healing, overall just the healing, when you have more hots on your target. So for example, you have 1 hot on your target, increases your healing by, for example, 20%, depending on how much mastery you have. Then if you put another hot on that target, they're going to gain 40% healing increase, and so on, so on, and so on. And it's only from your heals, by the way, it's not from every single party member. So if you can, on the tank for example, keep your life bloom up, keep your rejuvenation, and even your regrowth hot, even though your regrowth hot is absolutely atrocious, it heals nothing, it's really bad, but then it still increases your healing overall by a shit ton because of your mastery. I think the only hot you really shouldn't be keeping up at all times is wild growth, because wild growth takes a lot of mana and should only really be used in big AoE damage situations. So let's talk about if your tank is taking a lot of damage and you have all the hots on him, which you should be having at all times, and it still isn't really out healing what you need to out heal. It's barely just working out, and he's taking just a bit more damage than your healing. At this point you want to be casting Healing Touch. You do not want to be casting Regrowth. Even though it's a faster cast, it heals pretty much the same, but it takes more mana. So casting Healing Touch is a good thing as a filler spell, because it is really cheap in mana cost and it still does a decent amount of healing, it just has a longer cast. The only time you really want to cast Regrowth over Healing Touch in that scenario is when you get an Omen of Clarity proc, which is pretty much a 4% proc chance of your life bloom to make your next Regrowth cost no mana. Now if you're healing a target that spikes a lot in HP, for example he's on 100% HP and then he randomly drops down to 50%, this is a good time to use Swiftmend, as your hots just cannot out-heal this amount of damage. You can use Swiftmend, and with your Soul of the Forest you can then fairly quickly top them off with a Regrowth cast, because that's going to be like 200% stronger at this point. The two other good uses for Swiftmend is when, for example, you know that someone is going to take a bunch of damage, you can use Swiftmend and then put Rejuvenation on them, because that's going to be 200% stronger, and then overall they're just going to take a lot of healing from you when they do take that damage. The second good use for Swiftmend is if everyone in your raid team is taking a bunch of AoE damage, you can use Swiftmend into Wild Growth. It's going to be 75% stronger then, and you can combo that with Flourish, making the duration of your Wild Growth twice as long. Another good tip is that your life bloom ability should always get to expire on its own, because each time it does expire, it does give a really big heal to that target. So it's not a good thing to, for example, put a life bloom on a target, then swap it over to another target straight after that or midway through, because then that target you initially had it on is not going to get that extra big healing. Now the last important part of information I really want to talk about is your Rejuvenation spell. Do not underestimate this ability. You can put this on unlimited amounts of targets, so pretty much if you're not a 20-man raid team, you could potentially have it on every single one of them. The thing is though, that it sure costs a bit of mana to use it, and going Umu as a Resto druid is not really the most fun thing in the world. So keep in mind that you do not just spam Rejuvenation on everyone in the team. Rather use Rejuvenation on people that you feel are taking the most amount of damage. If that's 5 people, then put it on those. If there's 10 people, then focus on keeping Rejuvenation on 10 targets. It's pretty much just keep this heal on as many targets as you can, but just be careful so you don't go So now that we're on the topic of going I want to talk about a really strong cooldown that Resto druids have. Now it does have a 3-minute cooldown, and it's called Innervate. What this does is that you put it on a person, and during 10 seconds that person do not spend any mana from any ability at all. And if you want to use this with, for example, Wild Growth, that's a good choice. Also you can use this to get 10 Rejuvenations out. It obviously depends on your haste if you have the global cap or not, but for example if you do use this and then you want to put 10 Rejuvenations up, that's going to be completely mana free and it's really good. And then when you have all those 10 Rejuvenations up, you can use Flourish on that, and you pretty much just got yourself like a 20-second long Rejuvenation on everyone in the team, or 24 seconds if you just applied it, but it takes some time to put them all up. So the last piece of information I want to give you is about Iron Bark, and Iron Bark is an ability which has a 1.5 minute cooldown. It used to be 1 minute, but they increased it to 1.5, but if you do have the talent, which I was talking about in the start of the video, it does go down to 1 minute again. But this ability is a 20-second damage reduction that you can put on anyone, and it's going to be up for 12 seconds. This is best to use on, for example, tanks that are telling you that they are going to take a bunch of damage, or targets that you just see are taking shit tons of damage. So overall, just that plain 20% damage reduction. Most of the time, if you're doing raids in an actual raid team, people will tell you that you should use Iron Bark on the tank at this time, and for example, in a rotation with another guy. So it's pretty much just up to the raid team, but overall, just so you know, it's a 20% damage reduction, and it's up for 12 seconds. But anyways, that is going to be it for this guide. If you think I missed out on anything, then please let me know in the comment section below. If this helped you, or you did enjoy just watching this video, then please let me know by liking the video. And I'll thank you all for watching. See you in the next one, guys.